want to talk about the Goon Squad, the viral New Yorker manhood article, and a number of other articles that are sort of hitting on the same theme of American loneliness. I suggest you scroll away if you are highly sensitive because this is going to get a little weird. This article went viral a couple of weeks ago and it was in Harper's. You can go read it. I'm not going to have screenshots here and I probably couldn't even if I wanted to. I wasn't even sure if I could talk about this, but I saw someone else talking about it. Basically, while on its face, this article seems really provocative, actually about loneliness and young men in crisis specifically, right? They're talking about young men who spend a lot of time, like hours and hours of their day, gooning or sort of blasting their brains with short form content. It's corn, right? They're spending hours and hours and hours watching corn, right? And I think what Daniel Kolitz really gets at here is the idea that these young men are deeply lonely, they're deeply disconnected, and they're just deeply looking for a way to like embody themselves because they are so disconnected from like their own bodies and their own communities and American society at large. This article went viral because obviously any look into, especially like a lurid look into a very specific subsect of people will get this kind of reaction, but it made me really sad. I couldn't even find a way to talk about it because I know that I'm going to write about it at the end of the year. But basically, these men are like trying to control the mechanism of their own disaster, right? Because of all the stuff that we've been talking about, male loneliness, men not going to college, men not getting jobs, the economic crisis that we're in, the recession, the political movement, men becoming radicalized. It is very clear, and I talked about this in my review of Begonia, that the more time you spend online, the like crazier you get, and the more easy it is to lose your grip on reality and like a tether to what's actually happening in real life. And so these men who spend hours and hours and hours of their day watching corn are like losing their minds, but they're choosing to do it because it's easier to say, I choose this versus I can't get a job, I'm an incel, I'm a loser, I can't get a girlfriend, right? All of these things that are like very true because we see them happening, right? The male loneliness crisis, all of this stuff is them saying, well, I'm going to do this instead. And they find community through this, right? So it is about American loneliness, but one of the interesting things about the article is that they are finding other men who are doing the exact same thing as them and spending a lot of time like engaging in this activity with each other. The second most important takeaway from this article is that everything is gooning now, right? One of the things that he says in this article is that people who spend all their time shopping, people who spend all their time on TikTok, people who spend all their time on Instagram, people who spend all their time like blasting their brains with any type of content, who spend their time like standing celebrities, who spend their time making fan edits of celebrities, right? Stands themselves. He says that this is occupying the same brain space and the same mechanism that gooning is, right? They're just more honest about it because they're doing what they're doing to it. But if you boil it down to this activity, right, to spending hours and hours and hours of your day looking at short form content and like frying your brain and not going outside, then we have a very, very easy understanding of what the actual problem is. Sorry to plug myself again, because I've obviously talked about this a number of times on here. If you follow me, you know, when I wrote about this last August, the mainstreaming of loserdom, I said that there was obviously something going on the internet where a lot of people sort of glamorize this thing. While they may not be gooning, as it were, they are spending hours and hours of their day on social media or watching TV or on their laptops, just like not doing anything. They're not going outside. They're not making friends. They're not going to church. They're not bowling. They're not working. They're not doing much of anything. And when I talked about it in this article, the mainstreaming part was that it was seen as cool and glamorous, right? People come on here and say, I bed rotted for 9 hours. I don't have any friends. I don't go to parties. I don't do anything. I wanted to shout out this article in Cosmo that came out in July. Does anyone care that young women are just as lonely as men are? Because I do think that they covered a lot of the points that I'm going to talk about now in the New Yorker article, but I don't think enough people read this. Go read this. But in this piece by Jessica Winter, What Did Men Do to Deserve This? A lot of people are talking about how Scott Galloway now is building his platform, or continuing to build his platform because he's obviously very successful and very famous. He's continuing to build his platform on this idea that like men are disconnected from reality, right? And it's all the stuff that we are already talking about. It is easy for men to be radicalized if they are spending all their time online looking at manosphere content, looking at reasons for why they do not have jobs or they cannot get girlfriends, right? I've talked extensively about incel logic on this account, right? The idea that if I'm not 6'6" and I don't make $700,000 a year, then I don't deserve a girlfriend. And everyone who is deemed societally unattractive is worth less than you, but like you yourself are seeing yourself as less worthy of any physical love or attention because you don't look like whatever, Chris Evans. And so you can see that these people are again untethering themselves from reality and driving themselves absolutely mad. And this is the actual point. She also says that there are jobs that men aren't doing. A lot of the statistics that people throw out when they talk about men being in crisis are universal, right? They're not specifically tailored for men. They are, like, women are also unaliving themselves and not getting jobs and not able to go to college, and nobody talks about that part. The framing of men's work as spiritual and the need to have a man in the house is sort of ignoring the fact that women have always worked. Obviously, there is the idea of the stay-at-home mother, but that has never been a reality for 99% of women in this country, especially women of color, right? That is a very idealized ideal. I think what's actually happening here, as someone with a master's in sociology, is that we are entering another period of male grievance, and they're trying to find someone else to blame, right? They're blaming the economy, they're blaming all of these statistics, because they realistically can't really blame women anymore, right? One of the most American ideals is that if something happens to me, it's someone else's fault, right? They're coming to take our jobs. This whole idea that like women stole men's jobs and people of color stole white people's jobs and affirmative action, all of these things are very, very American in the idea that like there can only be one, and the lack of me having this thing means that you took it from me. And so in framing this whole idea of like male loneliness, the male loneliness epidemic, they're actually ignoring a lot of women in this equation, and women who are like also suffering and also lonely and also like really, really, really down bad. I think the real enemy here is the loneliness epidemic and the idea that like people are fundamentally disconnected from everything in their lives, and trying to create like a gender explanation for it or understand why people would spend hours and hours and hours of their day on social media is the thing, right? That's what we actually need to be focusing on, instead of being like, it's women's fault. I will also say, as someone who's made a couple of videos on this, is that we do place an undue amount of focus on men only because men, again, with the American grievance culture, make it other people's problem when they are not sort of catered to, right? I said in a previous video, I think last month when I made a video about this, I said that men are the ones who create social and societal unrest, right? Like Gamergate, there is this idea, and the red wave, right? Like the rise of Trump and all of these manosphere things, is that like it will become all of our problems if men aren't figured out. But like, I think the greater answer is that everyone is in crisis right now, and it's not just men. Like, men make it everyone's problem, but men aren't the only ones who are lonely.